Welcome back to Community Roundtable. And as we've been discussing with my good friend here, Captain Michael Taylor from the Baldwin Park City Department, in our last segment we left off that a lot of these victims that fell to these crimes, they kind of gather themselves after the fact. We all know when it's emergency to dial 911, but maybe after these crimes been committed, they're in a state of shock. They probably don't know what to do, and they felt probably 911 is not the right thing to do because that's for emergency uses. But what would you advise tell our audience that should these things happen to you, what's the first thing you need to do? Maybe look for facts or things they need to do that can actually help you guys.
Well, first of all, to be in a state of shock after a crime's occurred, that's not an uncommon thing. Most people are.
Right.
They feel victimized. First of all, they're usually shocked that it happened to them. Then after that, they feel victimized. There's a host of emotions they go through depending upon the type of crime that was committed against them. We find out people when they get their car stolen, they're in shock. It's unbelievable. The car was locked, it was here when they left it, they came back, and they feel like they've been victimized. Burglaries are the same way. Criminals have entered their private property and their sanctuary, the place where they feel safe, whether it's inside their personal vehicle, inside their personal home. So these are not uncommon feelings. First of all, they should call the police department right away and not touch the crime scene. They could disturb potential evidence or clues that might identify the perpetrator of the crime. So they want to leave the area that the crime was committed. They want to leave it as much untouched as humanly possible. Mm-hmm. Victims tend not to do that. They tend to start rummaging through things. They don't understand that there's a potential of gathering evidence, whether it's fingerprints. Fingerprints are easy to identify nowadays through computer technology. Mm-hmm. We can identify most prints in a matter of seconds once we are able to pick up the print and get it back to our facilities to send it in. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to digress just for 1 second about fingerprints. Right. Too many victims think that fingerprints are the end-all and that we're going to be able to get them in a crime scene. Right. Fingerprints are very difficult to get. Mm-hmm. There's a whole host of reasons why they're difficult to get and how easily they're messed up. Right. Which would take me longer than this segment will be able to air to explain, but what I'm trying to tell you is do not think that the officers are always going to be able to get a fingerprint at a crime, but at least give them the opportunity to look around, see if one's available.
Right.
Depends on surface, it depends on moisture, humidity, it depends on a lot of things. But getting back to the original point, yes, you should call the police department.
Dial 911?
Dial 911 if the crime is fresh and just appeared, and it depends.
Don't be afraid to dial 911.
Don't be afraid to dial 911. Let me give you a couple of examples. If you've just been robbed, you call 911. Mm-hmm. If you've just been burglarized and you walked into your house, call 911. If you see a crime occurring, whether it's a petty theft in progress or it's a drunk walking down the street that can barely stand up, call 911. Okay. Those are some easy examples maybe to gauge when to call 911. Right. Now, when not to call 911, it's very easy. When you get word that your identity has been stolen, there's no emergency, the crime has already been committed, your identity's already been stolen, you call the regular police number, report a crime, and they'll send an officer out. When you come home and you have damage because a car hit your vehicle or part of your property and damage something and it's gone, it's a hit and a run, you wouldn't call 911 for that. But if you by mistake call 911, that's not a problem. We just ask that the public be kind of vigilant in what they're calling for.
Right, you don't want to tie up the 911.
Right, you don't want to tie up 911 in case of emergencies. And just keep in mind that 911 is set aside for emergent police business. So that's how you really want to gauge it. If it's not an emergency, then don't call 911, just call your police department. But don't be afraid to call the police department. And if you make a mistake in your judgment and you called 911, the operator that you talk to will tell you that this is not an emergency, please call this number, and they'll give you the phone number to call back on. So it's not really a big deal.
Now, if you just come home and found, like, actually it happened to me twice my lifetime. You come home, you see your front door got broken into, your house is in a mess. Was that a good time to call 911 or maybe call?
Well, if you see that, it depends. If you see that your house door looks broken into, you don't know if there's somebody still in the house because they're not sure maybe what time you're going to come home, and they may have watched you engage when you're in and out. I mean, but then maybe you didn't stay within your normal schedule. So it's best to back away from that. When you come up to your residence and you see that, don't go inside the house. Back away from it, use your cell phone or a neighbor's phone and call the police department. Let the police officers go in there and investigate. And that's for two reasons. One, the criminal could still be in there. Two, you're not going in, so if there's potential evidence in there, the officers are in there, they're the trained people to look for evidence. You're not contaminating the crime scene, so to speak. So that would be a good reason to back away and to contact the police department. And in that instance, I would call 911.
Well, Michael, I'm going to put you on the spot for a little bit. My experience with that is when my house got robbed, broken into, I dialed the police department. But it took them many hours before they come. And the reason they gave me is that since this is not an emergency, that there was some other thing to take care of. So, going to put you on the spot. How you
not a problem. That happens more than you know. And what I say by it happens more than you know is that as police agencies, we have calls that are listed in priority. And what I mean by that is, if you called with your call, it's important. Okay, but is it more important than a robbery in progress? No. Is a robbery in progress more important than an assault, a felony assault with an instrument in progress? No. So we have to prioritize our calls. And based upon that, we dispatch, because we have a limited resource of officers out in the field to respond to these calls. You have to look at the population in general. You know, how big is your population, and how big is your police department that services them? Generally, what they ask for is about 2.1 officers per 1,000 populace. And what that means is that that's the total number of police officers that you have on your police department to service your community. It doesn't equate to the number of police officers that's on duty at any given time. And what I mean by that is, for instance, and I'll use my police department as an example, we have a population of about 85,000 citizens that live in our community. We have about 80 police officers total, counting the chief on down, that service our community. So that's less than one officer per 1,000. Okay? Well, on duty, patrolling our streets during the day, we'll generally have 5 to 6 officers in patrol cars, and in addition to that, maybe 1 or 2 supervisors. And that will service the community. Okay? And at nighttime, it's 6 to 7 on the streets with a supervisor or 2 supervisors that patrol the streets of the community. I mean, I don't need to tell you, you can do the math.